Anyway, before we start this what if, I just want to say I have not been posting good, and that's because I have a hard time choosing what to post. So the first three people to see this, please comment down the next part of whatever I should post, and please don't suggest a new what if, because I already have too many what ifs, and I really just want to post. I love doing this. Anyway, let's continue. You guys are here because you read the title. What if Belle found shambala and the Sentimani stone? Now, if you don't know what shambala or the Sentimani stone is, first off, real world, it's like an ancient place, and the Sentimani stone is an ancient jewel. And now, but what I'm really taking it from is Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. Now, Shambhala is an ancient place, and the Sentimani stone is also like a, the wish giving stone inside of the tree of life. Now, this stone can grant you multiple abilities, but this, you're probably wondering, how's Belle gonna find it? So here's what's gonna happen. We don't know the landscape of the lower world. You know, everything is drastically different. So that's where I'm gonna get this from. So Zeus dies, and Zeus has always been talking about this Centimali stone. So after Zeus dies, Belle's just like, I'm gonna say Zeus dies about 4 months earlier. Okay, so after Zeus dies, he tells Belle to, I don't know, Zeus is always talking about the stone to Belle. So Belle knows about its abilities. And after Zeus dies, Belle decides he wants to become an adventurer. Before he becomes an adventurer, he's going to find the stone. So, now, this is the good thing. Power of time skipping. Belle spends the next 4 months tracking and solving all the puzzles, and he gets to Shambhala. But there's a ugly sight. There are dead creatures everywhere. There are dead monsters, dead like you have like dead like elves, dead humans, dead dwarfs. You have these dead yeti creatures and dead blue people. And Belle's just walking around. And Belle opens his journal and his grandfather's journal that they worked on together. And he remembers, apparently Shambhala was the place where all the species lived together. And they all lived together because Shambhala was built around the tree of life. Okay, and apparently that was the first tree that the gods put on the lower earth. It was the tree that made that it was their like sustainability, that it was basically like an object to be worshipped for the gods. But hu but humanity, here's the thing, like, how humanity is like for human population? Like, what is the word for elf or dwarf? Dwarfmanity. Okay, dwarfmanity, elfmanity. Okay, basically, some point for 300 years they all lived in harmony. Even monsters, yes, even monsters lived in harmony. Until one day, a greedy, really weird-faced guy called Lazarevich, who was basically like a trainer, and these were the people these were like the police force who stopped people from doing bad things, even though it didn't really happen that much, probably like a few times a week. So, one day he decided that he wanted to be powerful. So, he would actually take a piece of the stone for himself. After taking the stone for himself, he his skin started to change. His veins started to become blue. And after that his men took it. So it was to the point where every police or all of Lazarevich's men had taken a piece of the Gentilmani stone. Sorry, something came up. all of Lazarevich men had took the Gentamali stone. Now, all of Lazarev, like most of Lazarevich's men, started going crazy with power. Okay, Lazarevich men started going crazy with power. They started abusing it. They started taxing. They started destroying. They started taking stuff without axing. So there would be a rebellion. And there's more between all the races. Now, werewolves too, because, like, Bet is a werewolf. I don't know all the races. Amazonians too, but I don't know, like, all the races of Damichi. But yeah, like, even monsters started to get up. Afterwards, Lovarovich men were on the. Now, it's because, like they had always, like, they were tolerating it, but when Lazarevich, like, men did stop them from coming to praise the Tree of Life, they started to stand up, and there'd be like a long war, and the tree would keep on passing. The tree would keep on passing through different groups until everybody had a small bit of its power. Unfortunately, it did affect the monsters in a different way, twisting their minds, making them monsters. And such some monster races had more than others, which resulted in like minotaurs being too strong for a level 1 to take down. So eventually, like, the elders, or like a group of heroes, basically went and they hit and they grabbed the stone and they took it. Now it was a group of unified heroes, and like they managed to defeat all of the greedy people. Afterwards, the elders, basically all the elders, departed and left uh, Shambala. Now, some guardians stayed back to protect the stone in case any other people would come to get it or to try to find it. Such they left. Elves took the knowledge of Shambhala. Dwarves took like the craftsmanship, and Amazonians, like, they took the environment, which is why they live in lots of trees and temples like that. And elves and humans, well, they're just humans, honestly. And monsters, their minds were already twisted. And this is around the time the gods decided to come to heaven because everybody was just divided. And first of all, rate that story down below because I just totally made up that story. If it sounded good, tell me if it sounded good. Rate it 1 through 10. Anyway, while I was explaining the story, Bo would make his way through Shambhala. And if you're wondering why these bodies haven't, deceased, it's because there are bones on the ground, but you have to realize some races live longer than other races. And most of these people took a piece of the Sintamali stone, so it would take some time for their bodies to decompose. Now, the children of the people decided to say the Centimali stone was a myth. And the only people who know about it are gods, which would explain why Bel knows about it, because his grandfather is Zeus. And at this point, it's not even a spoiler. Anyway, we'll continue. Uh, so Belle would eventually find the Centimali stone, and it'd be like in a giant arena of dead bodies everywhere. After finding the Centimali stone, Belle would wonder what he should do, and he'd read a book about like touching it it would say become one with it, and like Zeus had always told Belle, people who didn't have strong wills would lose their minds to it, and Belle knew it. So Belle would take the power of the Centimani stone. Now, whether he took a fraction or all of it, up to Belle. Anyway, as Bo would take it, he'd start to feel his veins turn blue, and he'd start feeling more powerful. When all of a sudden he'd hear something, it would be one of those monsters, but they were alive. The monster would basically walk towards Belle as it would lift his mask off, and it was an old blue guy. As the guy would start to turn like the guy, it was an old guy, and he was blue. The blue started to fade from the guy as he started to die, and that was it. No. Yeah, he would he would speak to Belle in like a sort of language, shambalian or something, whatever. And Belle would sort of understand because Zeus had taught him about it. And it'd say, protect the stone, as the guy would say. And Belle would decide to protect the stone, so Belle wouldn't take the entire stone. He'd just take like a little bit of it and collect its power. Now, I'm gonna say when Belle uses the full power of the stone, he turns blue. But besides that, Belle's good. Besides that, when Belle uses the full power of the stone, he turns blue. When he starts using more and more of it, the more his veins start to turn blue, and to the point where you could actually see all his veins through his skin. So after that, Belle decides to go to Royal. Now Belle runs to Royal, and Belle sees that he has some enhanced stats, basically. And Bo gets to Arroyo, and I'm actually gonna pause this because I kind of want to make this a long video. I'm gonna make this 25 minutes, and I don't want this thing to cut off midway as it normally does. Anyway, I made some space. So yeah, Bo would notice some things as he would notice he was stronger, faster. He had more senses, and he could sort of focus better. He was also like he was just more agile and he was like defensiver because you know like he saw some of those wounds he's seen some of the wounds I mean he'd seen some of the people's wounds and they were stabbed like if you played Uncharted 2 like you remember that one part where Nathan is getting choked out by the Shambalian and Tibet jumps on him. He stabbed him like 10 times. He stabbed him like in the back and the neck, and he stabbed him like once or twice in the head, and he shook it off and literally jumped away. So yeah, Bo would basically make his way there. Now Bo would decide to keep his powers a secret, or his discovery of Shambhala a secret, because no one knows where Shambhala is. Okay, not even the gods have forgot, and the only reason why Zeus really knew about it was because he used to run he used to run the one of the most powerful familiars in the world. He knew stuff, and that's the only sense I'm gonna give for it. I mean, come on, he ran the second strongest familiar in the world. So let's continue. Bell would eventually make his way to Aurario, and Bell would wonder, what he should, which familiar he should join. He'd look around and he wondered just which familiar would be best for him. Bell would go to the guild as he asked for a guild woman and he'd be given Aina. Now, being given Aina, Bell would basically say he was a rookie adventurer and he wanted to know which familiar was possibly best for him. Aina would say that there are multiple familiars in Aurario, but if she was honest, lots of them are just invisible. And Bell would ask what she meant, and Aina would say, basically, they're not mentioned in the Damichi story. That's basically what it means. There are so many familiars. Remember, Bell got in. Bell said that that he wanted to join so many familiars, but they all kicked him out. And who are their familiars? Come on. Anna would say that they do have a trial, and Bell asked what that was, and Anna would say A trial is basically when you it's something that we do about once every 6 months where rookie adventurers or wannabe adventurers go to different familias and they just test it out. And Bell would decide that this might have been a good idea. He'd also sort of see if he could trust the people or not. So Bell would mainly just go to like, for this, Bell would basically be given a list of familiars and he'd have to choose 8 familiars off the list. And Bell would just choose 8 random familiars. No, he'd have to choose 10 random. Bell choose 10 random familiars. Now, Bell would be given a special pass, such as Aina would tell Bell in 2 weeks that he should, go to the familiars he checked, and they should like be able to like let him in and see. Each familiar would offer like a 2 to 3 day course for them to just see how the familiar operates. Now, 2 weeks later, Bo would would be ready to go. And for now, Bo would really just be sleeping on the floor. And somebody would have been watching Bo while he sleeps. A special little goddess. Anyway, Bo would decide to go first. From what he heard, Bell would decide to check out multiple familiars. The first familiar he would check out would be the Hephaestus familiar. The Hephaestus familiar was a familiar where if you wanted to learn more craftsmanship, you should definitely go. And Bo would say that is a good familiar, but not many of the familiar members are that powerful. They are one of the richest, but I'm guessing they don't really specialize in dungeon activities. I'm more looking for a dungeon-based familiar, Bo would think to himself. The next familiar he would go to would be I think it's called Autolus familiar. It's a familiar that runs a shop. If you watch the Danmachi Season 3 OVA, then you know who I'm talking about. Okay, and Bo would go there as he'd see that these familiar members were really smart and knew how to, like, create potions and stuff. And Bo would think maybe this would be good and he could basically learn more about his powers and the stone, but he just decided that it wasn't for him. After that, Bell would check out the Hermes familiar, and as at the Hermes familiar, he'd see that there are many things going in and out. Bell think the Hermes familiar was a well-run familiar, and he would definitely keep it in mind when he was choosing. Alongside with that, he'd also meet the god Hermes, as he does meet all the gods, of the familiars. And he'd meet Hermes, as Hermes would ask for Belle's name, and Belle would say Belle. And Hermes would be like, Belle, huh? And Hermes would say, well, I hope you choose my familiar. And Belle would go on, definitely checking the Hermes familiar, because it is a good familiar. Afterwards, Belle would go on. Wait, that's the third familiar he went to. Afterwards, sorry. Belle would check on damn it. What's that one dude? Take, to the Takumi Alchemy familiar, and it'd be well rounded in fighting and combat. It might have been a small familiar, but it was a good one too. After that, Bell would go to the Equalos familiar. While at the Equalos familiar, he would immediately cross it off his list because it really wasn't a good familiar for him per se. Ah, my eyes. Ah. Anyway, it really wasn't a good feeling for him. Bell would then take a small break. While taking a break, Bell would like think that why can't he join? It's too bad about what happened to the Astrea familia, and Bell would say that's the familia he would have joined. And if you don't know about the Astrea familia, more at the end of the video, I guess. So that's the fifth familia he's been to. Bell would then go to the What's the familiar called? I'm skipping it down to 8. I can't do this. Anyway, after that, Bo would go to the Ganesha familiar. Going to the Ganesha familiar, Bo would again immediately check it on his list of familiars to join, as the Ganesha familiar is just so good and they protect the city. Belle would think this would be the place. Also, they're allowed to bring up monsters to the surface and train and test them, and this would actually be a good thing. So Belle would definitely check the Ganesha Familia on his list. Afterwards, we got the fight. Let me make sure. Actually, afterwards, Belle would go to the Ishtar Familia. He'd immediately cross it off his list as they were just trying to get at him, and Bo didn't really have the time for that, and he's just too flusterable. Okay, yeah. He did go to the Apollo Familia, and Apollo, he'd immediately cross it off his list. Afterwards, Bo would say he saved the best two for last. Bo would then go to the Freya Familia. As he'd go to the Freya Familia, everybody would just look at him and stuff. And Bo would be like, oh, this isn't a welcoming familiar at all. But Bo wasn't going to cross it off his list yet. Apparently, this was one of the two strongest familiars in Orario. Bo would walk in as, like, there would be a wolf guy, Alan, if you don't know, who would basically take Bo to his room where Bo would put nothing down because he has nothing. What does he even carry in his backpack? Like Bo literally left his house with nothing. Okay? Like, did he not have extra clothes? He just left with nothing. Anyway, and then after that they go to the dining hall as they eat, and Alan would tell Bo to get up, and Bo would say, "Oh, yes, sir." And Alan would say, it's time for us to train. If you're gonna train, if you're gonna join us, you have to be strong enough. As Alan would, as afterwards, uh, a giant man would walk behind Bell as he'd say, "If you're not willing to, if you don't want to die, then I suggest you leave here." As it would be Otaro, as Bell would be like, "Die?" And he'd be like, "You might die during this training, or you might be severely hurt. Do you have what it takes?" As Bo would be like, "What it takes," and Bo would be like, "Yeah." And Alan would, and afterwards, Frey would be behind Otaro. He'd say, "Good, let's see what you've got." Not many people sign up for this program. You must be a daring person. Not many people go to the Freya Familia in the program. I mean. And then Bo would be like, "Sure." So first, they go to the Bill against a level 1. The level 1 it would be a real sword, and the level 1, who I'm gonna call him C. No, I'm gonna call him Wood. Nah, he doesn't even need a name. He's not important. Anyway, the random level 1 adventurer would run at Bell as he'd go for a slash. Now, Bell would easily dodge this. He'd then go for Bell again, and Bell didn't really want to, stand out showing his powers too much. So Bell would just squeeze the guy's wrist like Tanjiro did to that one dude, not really breaking it, but like cracking it. And the guy would start be like, "Ow!" But he'd get up and throw a punch at Bell, and Bell would be like, most people would have fallen down in pain. Freya Familia is definitely tough. That's something to keep in mind. He'd pick up his sword as he'd go for more attacks, and Bell would dodge them all. And afterwards, Bell would grab the guy's hand again, and he would like headbutt him. Afterwards, he would then punch the guy and slam his head into the ground, knocking him out. Alan would say good, and as the day would go on, more and more people would start to attack Bell. Like, in the first 1 or 2 hours, Bell didn't really get hit, and he didn't really get tired, But sooner, when he started getting to level threes and fours, he started getting hit a little, and he started finding it harder for him to injure them, and he started getting tired. And this would happen, and Bo, didn't want to overuse his powers because he didn't want people to see his blue veins. But he would just use the base powers, and he uses enhanced agility to dodge most of them. And Bo would basically, at the end of the day, Bo would have cuts over his body, and he'd have like a giant stab wound. And the an elf would come to heal Belle, and the elf would notice something. The stab wound that Belle had was bigger, but it seemed to have shrunken a little. Alongside with that, there was some blue stuff coming out of Belle. Now, Belle's blood was still red, but since Belle was kind of overusing his powers, his blood started to turn blue. But she didn't know what it was exactly. So she would heal Belle, and the same thing would happen the next day, but Belle would go against the level 7 Alan. Now, Alan would be too quick for Belle, but Belle would manage to land about 2 hits on him before, being knocked out. And the third day would go by the same, and Belle would think Rhea Familia was definitely a tough familia, and the people seem not that. He's not. Belle wouldn't know if trustworthy was the right word, but they seemed secretive, like they could keep a secret. Afterwards, Belle would go to the last familia on his list, as the last familia on his list would have been the Loki familia. He'd walk in just like normal. As he'd walk in, Belle would be encountered by Reveria. Reveria would then look at Belle and she'd say, "So you're the only one. Anyway, follow me." They'd go to Finn's office where Belle would meet Loki and Finn would basically explain how how their familia excels at dungeon exploration. And tomorrow, early in the morning, they'll be going in the dungeon, and Belle is to watch them how they work in the dungeon, and just to get a feel for how dungeon exploration works. Also, like like some survival tips. And Belle would agree, but Bo had asked what he was going to do for today. And he'd say he was going to basically see how the Loki familiar operates. And Bo did check the Freya familiar on his list for Fluence to join too. Bo would actually, the first day, Bo would see how they operate, how things work, like the guard system, the post, the familiar members. Most of the familiar members were knights, but again, Bet and Belle wouldn't meet Ayas because she was actually in the dungeon that day, or she was out with some people, like those the Amazonian girls, Tiona and Tione. Now the next day, Belle would be forced to wake up early in the morning, and they'd go into the dungeon. As they go into the dungeon, Belle, it wouldn't be a big party. It'd be like 25 people basically, and they were going to go all the way down to floor 20. They were going to go to floor, I'm going to say 20. They were going to go to floor 20 just to show Belle the resting zone and some floors after the resting zone. So they start going down and stuff, and there would be Minotaurs on level 2. Now, as they be Minotaurs on level 2, uh, there would be about one of the familiar members was about to get hit by a Minotaur club, so Belle would rush at her and push her out the way. As Belle would push out the way, the Minotaur would have slammed the club as hard as he could on the back of Belle's head. Now, Belle would get hit by this, and more 3 Minotaurs would start surrounding Belle and beating the crap out of him. And I'm gonna say Belle would basically be knocked out unconscious. I'm gonna say he pushed Ice out the way, and not a random familiar member, just to make it better. So yeah, Belle would end up getting knocked out by that, not dying but knocked out. Now Belle would wake up as he would find himself in like a cart or something. And Bo would start to get up, and Bo would be like, what happened? And, Belle would wake up as he'd see a giant, as the giant would have just been cut across the throat, dying, and Belle would be like, what's happening? Where are we? And, uh, Tiona, the short-haired Amazonian, if you watched Demichi Sword or Tora, you would know these characters better. Or or she'd say, "We just defeated the floor boss," as she'd be walking towards Belle alongside with her sister, and Belle would be like, "What happened to me?" And they'd be like, "Those minotaurs gave you a beating." And Gareth would be like, "You're a tough young man, that's for sure." And afterwards, like Finn would say his thumb was aching, as something didn't feel right about this Bell kid. Or it wasn't, but but Finn couldn't tell if it was wrong or right. So afterwards, Ias would be there, as Ias would say, "I'd like to thank you for stepping in to rescue me." Afterwards, Bet would say what he did wasn't really that great, as Tiona would be like, "Hey, how did you survive that?" And Belle would be like, "What are you talking about?" And the long-haired one would be like, "Are you crazy? You're you're level 0, and those Minotaurs started hitting you in the back of their head with their clubs multiple times, and you survived that." And Belle would just say he was super strong. Now they'd go down, and Belle would again just observe for the next 2 days, and after that, Belle would leave. Afterwards, Belle would there would be confirmation that Belle had gotten confirmation from from 6 of the 10 familiars he visited that, he could join them. The first familiar would have been the Ganesha, second Freya, third the ones that he could join the 6 familiars that gave him approval to join were Ganesha, Loki, Freya. Hephaestus didn't give him permission to join. I'm gonna say the Icolos familiar gave him permission to join, and it was wait. So Loki, Freya, Ganesha, Icolos, Hermes, and Ishtar familiars gave him permission to join. Again, Freya, Loki, Ganesha, Icolos, Hermes, and the Ishtar familiar all gave him permission to join. And Bell had about a 1 week to make his decision. After making his decision, he would be walking as he would be tripped. While like being tripped, people would tell him to move it, as a black-haired, a pigtailed black-haired little goddess would come up to Bella. She'd say if she needed help. He'd ask Bella if he needed help. And now I'm gonna leave this off. Now I need your help. If I need you to tell me which familiar should Belle join. Now I'm now honestly, it would be really hard, and honestly, Ganesha, Loki, and Freya familiars, if those are voted, I will definitely make him join those ones. But if you guys say he should either join the Hermes, Icolos, or Ishtar familiar, I will flip a coin to see if he should join those. Or should Bell still join Hestia? It's up to you guys. And if the comment section doesn't work, come back in like a few minutes. Come back in like the next day or something, because I'll fix that. Anyway, I guess a fact for the day. Let me do a fact for today. Um, should I do a fact for the day? Okay, how about I do a fact about, um, I'll do a fact about Damichi. Uh, did you know that Facts about the Amici, these are hard. Let me think about it. Okay, I got a fun fact. No, I'm pretty sure I've said this in another video, but I didn't say it as the fact. Like, I just mentioned it in another video, but it wasn't like the fun fact at the end of the video. So, fun fact of Bell is that, did you know, but it took Bell 3 days to kill his first monster. And the first monster Bell ever killed was an orc. Was like a goblin. And the goblin again took 3 days for Bell to kill. And after he killed it, Bell ran home to Goddess Hestia and told her that he had killed the orc that he had been trying to kill for 3 days. And Goddess Hestia looked at him weirdly, and Bell felt ashamed, and he ran out. So, voila. Again, thanks. Subscribe if you want. Have a good day. Have a blessed day. Bye.